Mercedes is looking to bounce back from a bad weekend in Austria, and we won't have to wait too long for this scenario to happen, as the Brackley-based squad is bringing a huge upgrade package on the next race in Silverstone. This is the closest of the races they can call home, so from a logistical point of view, it would make a lot of sense for them to bring everything new to the W14. But will it be enough to push them in the right direction? And if so, can they finally win a race in 2023 and make the remainder of the season a much more interesting show to watch? Ever since the 2023 season started, Mercedes were convinced that they spent the last 18 months developing their car in the wrong window, which is why a technical reshuffle was the only logical solution to be applied back in Brackley. To top that off, the Silver Arrows have found a new basis to work on the car, and after the double podium finish in Barcelona and Hamilton's P3 in Montreal, a race in which the team expected to struggle a lot, it's safe to say that Mercedes are now in a much better position to be competitive in the remainder of the season. But the Austrian GP has raised a lot of questions about the pace of the W14, and everything Mercedes built their fans up to has fallen down all of a sudden after Hamilton and Russell were yet again the slowest of the cars compared to the top teams, with the exception of Stroll, who finished behind them. This is definitely not what they expected from the W14 in terms of drivability, as Wolff had to hop on the radio and ask Hamilton to drive the car because they know it's bad and they can't do anything about it. If you think about it, not keeping the car within the white lines and not being able to fend off the attacks of McLaren is definitely not the scenario we thought was written in the stars for Mercedes, but it is what it is, and Austria is now in the past. Before we talk about the upgrades in Silverstone, ones of which Wolff has a lot of hope for and even suggested that it could be the first win of the season for the team, let's dive a bit deeper into why the car has performed the way it did in Austria and whether or not the team should be worried about the upcoming race in Silverstone. When talking about the lack of pace and drivability in the car, something that cost Hamilton a total of 15 seconds of penalties, with the aftermath of the race also interfering with his result, he went on to say, "We took out a lot of front wing. We knew we had a really bad rear end here, so we took out a lot of front wing to try and keep that balance so that we could do a long run. Go long, and we massively under-egged it. I was like almost full lock around the last two corners. Going into turn 10, it was just sliding and I couldn't do anything about it." Through the stops, we then added a lot of wing. The car started to slowly come back to at least getting around and staying on track. Obviously, this isn't an issue that Mercedes expected to struggle with, especially not with how the car has behaved at the previous two races in terms of handling in medium and high-speed corners, which is what turns 9 and 10 in Austria are. But with this in mind, we were yet again brutally reminded that if you want to catch up to Red Bull, there needs to be a lot of work done behind the curtains. And Mercedes, out of all the teams out there, knows this better than anyone. That's why the team is bringing a massive upgrade package, one that will massively revolve around the floor of the car, because this is where the car bleeds out the most of its performance. Yep, the Brackley-based squad did bring a new version of the floor with the new upgrade package in Monaco that was further exploited in Barcelona, one that turned out to be a bit bad in terms of handling the car on the low corners. But right now, that's enough for them to be in the very competitive fight in P2 with Aston Martin, with Ferrari looking to join them soon after the recent surge in performance in Austria. That's why the newest upgrade package is going to involve a lot more than the floor itself. But what is even more important is that Mercedes were never looking to be competitive for wins straight out of the gate with the first array of upgrades, but further down the road once newer upgrades start to arrive to the grid. This is one of the reasons why they have a huge hope for the Silverstone upgrades, and when talking about this, Wolff said, "We're bringing a larger upgrade package to Silverstone, and then we should have another one before the summer shutdown before the Belgian GP. The learnings of the car have accelerated a lot since we changed some of the conceptual architecture. There should be decent steps coming in the next 4 races, and we are understanding better the simulations, which correlates with what we're seeing on track. That has been our problem over the last 18 months, but we are seeing good performance gains coming from the wind tunnel. We have a better understanding of what the car needs in order to go fast, what the setups need to look like. The steps are getting bigger now, and we are making good inroads." Silverstone is a track that will definitely suit the W14 more than Austria, and given the fact that the fan support here will be extraordinarily large for Russell and Hamilton, we're not expecting anything less than a front row start and finish for either one of the drivers. But considering the fact that Red Bull is still miles ahead of everyone else, it would be a bit uncharacteristic for us to expect that the Brackley-based team will make a massive jump with just another upgrade package on its floor, right? Well, here is where you guessed wrong. With the initial upgrade in Monaco, the team found the perfect basis to work on the car, and they're now pushing it in the right direction, as confirmed by Wolff and Hamilton, as well as Russell. But there are still some fans that are asking the question, why isn't Mercedes copying Red Bull's floor, considering the fact that they have exactly what they need in terms of pictures and structure? The answer to this question is simple, and it has been answered by James Allison, the old, new CTO of Mercedes. The chassis difference is too big, and if they had RB19's floor, the car wouldn't perform better. And while this statement brought a bit of tears onto Mercedes fans' eyes, worry not, they're going to use as much information from Red Bull's floor as they can to accommodate their own structure of the car. When talking about this, James Allison admitted that there's a group of engineers who are working on extrapolating the data that the Monaco GP has provided for them from Red Bull's floor, and then further implementing as much of these upgrades as possible in Silverstone. As he elaborated, certainly, it always attracts a lot of interest. There is a lot of scurrying around with team cameramen, not just to rely on the TV pictures, which are low resolution and not good enough grade. But yes, we got a nice clutch of Red Bull imagery, and that's always a good thing for our aerodynamicists to pore over and see if we can pick out details that will be of interest to us in our ongoing test program. As of now, I can't help but note that everything feels like if you're not copying Red Bull successfully enough, that you're going in the wrong direction, as Adrian Newey has definitely held a proper lesson in aerodynamics and how a car should act on the grid. But just like Allison said, Red Bull's dominance isn't God granted to them, and while they're there on merit, they're not going to be for a long period of time, because the steps that are being taken in Brackley are ones that are giving Mercedes a lot of positive vibes. This is something that Hamilton and Russell have both spoken about, and from a mindset of which they believe the RB19 will be victorious in every race in 2023, to one in which they feel like the gap is closing very fast and there won't be a very monotonous season ahead of us. I really hope that Silverstone will be the race in which we'll see either one of the Brits emerge victorious. But as with Aston Martin's upgrades here, and at the pace that Ferrari presented last year here, with Sainz winning his first race, Mercedes might have a lot more to handle than catching up to Red Bull. One thing is for certain, we're going to have a very competitive weekend ahead of us. And with the support of the British fans, do you think that Hamilton or Russell could emerge victorious in Silverstone?